Now I'm about to tie my second fly from J. Nichols Tying Dry Flies. I reviewed this book this week. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's really a great book. Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So the second pattern I'm choosing to do out of this book, it's called the Foam Humpy. Now I've always loved fishing humpies, just a general attractor pattern, but I've never loved tying them because they're not the easiest flies to tie. They've got that big deer hair hump part of the body, but the beauty of this one, it skips that step. It uses foam for the big hump. Now the book didn't really say who created this pattern, but it did talk a little bit about how you fish it, and I'll tell you how I usually fish these type patterns or any big general attractor dry fly. I just fish it through fast, riffled, broken water where the fish only has a split second to see some tasty looking food drifting by and they go for it. So I'm sure this pattern is going to float like any humpy would. They don't float real high necessarily, but they will float all day long. Now this was the first time I've tied this specific pattern, so one tip for you, don't go as small as a 16 or 18. I tried it on a 16 and it was just a little bit harder. I probably should have started on a 12, and if this is the first time you're going to be tying this fly, I'd probably start on a bigger size. But it is a pretty cool looking pattern and you can make it in any number of color combinations, and I think you're going to like it. Let's give it a shot. There it is in the vise, a foam humpy. Now common sizes for this guy, it says as big as a 12 down to an 18. I'd probably fish it in the smaller sizes, so I'm going to try and tie this on a 16, which is a little bit harder than a 12, but I think we can make it work. Now, for the thread, just use whatever color you want your body to be, and I'm going to use a peacock blue. So I'll lay a little base down, maybe the first third of the hook, not too much. So we're going to catch in our calf hair for the wing. So get a patch of calf hair right here. These are pretty fine fibers, hairs I guess, but they're not real long. So I'm going to put a generous portion in my stacker. Let's see, it does stack pretty well. Let's take a look at this. So that is stacked pretty well. But what I'll do here, I'll take it out with my non-tying hand. That way I can minimize how many times I have to swap hands with it. So there we go. That's it right there. I got a couple of rogue fibers right here. You can see this is a pretty generous portion right here. And I've already tried to pull out the under fur. So I'm going to catch it in pretty close to the front, but envision after we flip it up that we'll have, 3, maybe 4 wraps of hackle in front of it. So I caught it in with a pinch wrap, but not real tight just yet. So I'm going to go back and get tighter. And these wraps right here are pretty tight. So I'm trying to avoid that spinning around on me, and it did just a little bit, but I think we can get it back up where we want it. Okay, that should work right there. And that's enough wraps that it should be held in place pretty well. So what I'll do here, I'm going to try and lift this up at about a 45-degree angle and then put my scissors sort of parallel to the hook, and then just cut it off as close as I can get it. And that might help me get a little bit of a taper there. Okay, so just take your thread, medium wraps to tighter wraps if you want, to just try and build a little bit of a taper going down. We'll fill in this gap with our tail in just a minute. Okay, so we got a decent looking taper right there. Now the next component we're going to tie in, it's going to be our tail, mousse body hair. So this stuff right here, and not a big chunk, maybe a piece about like that right there, 12 or so fibers. You can see the tips, they're pretty far apart, so you definitely want to put this in your stacker. Let's see if that stacked okay. And not real well, but it might work for us. Okay, so I've got one super long one I'm going to just pull out with my fingers. And I think that'll work right there. So how long do we want this tail? I'm going to say a little bit longer than a hook gap. So let's just catch this in right here with a little pinch wrap. Couple wraps, not real tight. Now we can go tighter as we get back. And if it starts spinning around the hook on you, which that's doing just a little bit, you might want to lift these up and then put a wrap right up under it. Okay, that's got them on top for the most part. I'll just take all this mousse, try to do the same thing we did with that calf body hair. Pull it up at about a 45-degree angle, scissors parallel to the hook, and then snip it. And if you get that right, or if you get lucky, you will get a smooth body between this calf up here and then the mousse hair tail. And that's a little bit lumpy, but you know what? It's going to be fine. Okay, so before I work on stacking these up and standing them upright, I'm going to go ahead and catch in my foam. So depending on the size of the fly, either 2 or 3 millimeter foam, cut a strip about as wide as a hook gap. This one might be just a little wide, but you know what? It's close enough. Cut a little notch in it right there, and I'm going to catch that in just right on top. I'll do a couple wraps and then make sure I'm on the top like I want. I think that's going to be fine. Now we'll take a few wraps going back just to right on top of that tail. And before I'm done, let's just flip it over and see, is that going to be a long enough body? I think it is. We're going to be fine. So now we can just bury this stuff right here. And remember, the blue, the color of your thread, is the color of the body. So just put plenty of wraps right here, get you a nice looking base. It doesn't have to be perfect because all the stuff on top is going to be hidden when we flip this foam over. But I'm just going to lay a few extra wraps. I'm sure you could dub this, and I just nicked my thread. That's always annoying. I'm just going to have to spend a few extra wraps right here to get through that little nick. All right. Yeah, that's going to be fine. It's getting a little bit sloppy on me. But before I fold that over and tie it off, I'm going to take my thread right back up here to the wing. Now I'm going to stand it up and then split it. So what you'll do here, just get your thread right up behind it and then lift it up and put as many wraps as you need to kind of prop this up. And we're going to split it in just a second, but we want to get it propped up first. Okay, well, that's close enough. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just split them with my fingers and then do a few X wraps in between them. So that's 2 on that one right there. Now I'm going to lift up this side and try to do 2 this way right here. And what I did see in the book there, that one, I trapped a few going back, which I don't really want to do. You can lift each of these up and then just put a few wraps right around the post, like almost like you were doing 2 parachute posts. So you see that? I've got one right there. That one slipped. Let's do another one. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing right here on my side. Just put a couple wraps right around here, around this post. And then lock it in. So see what we got right there? Those wings, they're pretty well separated. Got a few of these ugly fibers going back. Let's see if we can just go ahead and take care of these. We probably didn't need to do that, but you know, why not? So now let's keep our thread just a little bit behind the wings. We're going to fold this over, and then we'll put 2 wraps in here just to measure how big of a hump we're going to get on this guy. See if that is big enough, or do I want to go a little bit forward of that? I think I want to go a little forward. So I'm going to back those off, take my thread just a little bit in front of where it was right there. Now catch it in again. So now my hump's just a little bit bigger. I think that's going to look better. 2 wraps right there, make sure we're adjusted. Take a look at it on the top. Is it coming off the top? Is it coming off the bottom like we want? It's close enough for me, so I'm going to put a 3rd wrap in here to really lock it. Now just get in here, pull this stretchy foam as tight as you can, and then snip it as close as you can. So we'll take a couple extra wraps right here, and we might have to prop these wings up again, but that's okay. Not a big deal. So the next thing we're going to tie in is some dry fly hackle. And plenty of options here. Whatever color you want, grizzly, brown, black, or get crazy. Do whatever you want. Just some good dry fly hackle. I'm going to use grizzly because I like grizzly for just about everything. I'll strip off a little piece right there. Now I'm going to catch it in with the darker colored side forward, which kind of means the concave side toward the hook. So 2 or 3 wraps behind it. Now let's lift these wings up and do a few more wraps up in front of it just to really lock this in. I'm going to snip off this butt end of this hackle feather. Now don't worry if your wings are sticking forward. We can try and prop them back up when we wrap this hackle, or we could just do this, pull them back, and then maybe put a few extra wraps right here just to, might help you prop them back up. Yeah, I did a little bit, not a whole lot here. Okay, so let's get our thread up here to the eye where we're going to catch it off, and I want to try to get 2 wraps behind it, and then at least 3 or 4 in front of it, depending on how bushy you want your fly. Okay, I think, was that 2 or is that 3 and behind it? I should have counted. Might have been 3, but that's all right. Let's do, say, 3 up forward and see what that gives us. And I just slipped. Well, that happens. Now we can count them. There's 1 behind it. There's 2 behind it. Let that be a lesson. Use your hackle pliers. Don't just try to use your fingers, especially when you've only got about 3 inches of a feather to work with. All right, that's 2 in front of it. There's 3. Is that going to be bushy enough? You know what? I'm going to risk it and go 1 more. All right. I think that's 2 behind and 4 in front. Let's go ahead and put a couple wraps right here. And I think that's going to be a bushy enough front hackle. Before I snip off that feather though, I'm just going to try to pull all these back so I don't trap too many of them going forward. And I don't want it to go too far back, just back far enough where I can get a good whip finish on this. I think that head right there is going to be big enough to get a whip finish. Okay, now we just got this extra hackle to contend with right here. Let's snip this guy off and see if we have any cleanup. Well, I think we're good. Just a drop of head cement right there and this guy's good to go. So there you go, pretty bushy fly. One bit of advice, don't start on a size 16 or 18. First ones of these you tie, I should have tied it on a 12. It would have been a little bit easier, but I think this is a fishable fly and I'm happy enough with it. So that's it everybody, I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care and we'll see you next time.